Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where the unthinkable has happened. A Marvel property is getting bad reviews. It's not a Marvel movie. I don't know what it would take for that to happen, although to be fair, I don't think Marvel has made a movie worthy of bad reviews yet. It happens to everyone eventually, but so far Kevin Feige is doing good. But I'm sure he's happy he divested himself from the television and comics division of Marvel because they've stepped in it with Iron Fist, where the first wave of reviews came out this morning and they were not good. I think part of it is just the problem with the Marvel Netflix situation overall. There's a sameness to the shows. I think that, we talk about formula filmmaking and Marvel all the time. I think that the movie division, Kevin Feige manages to still keep it fresh in some ways, but Netflix, that formula is becoming awfully stale and awfully obvious. I think Luke Cage was really skirting the edge there, and Iron Fist tumbled over the edge. But I think there are other factors at play, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute, but I think definitely, I think the Marvel Netflix shows might have to some degree overstayed their welcome. I think they might have taken too long getting to the Defenders. But also, it's the whitewashing issue. And I know that many of you are writing, Grace, I'm so upset that you would say that because Danny Rand has always been Caucasian and how dare you and all, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that no matter what the source material might be, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, I think that the appropriation of other cultures, elements by, Caucasians is people just aren't willing to stand for it anymore. And I don't know what it's going to take for Hollywood to realize that this is just, everybody's tired of it. You had Exodus Gods and Kings, which really, I think, started the conversation in earnest again. Gods of Egypt really crumbled because of this. The Great Wall is having problems. Doctor Strange was able to overcome it, I think, because of the quality of the film. Benedict Cumberbatch, being a critical darling. And then also, I think Tilda Swinton, even though she took an Asian role, which I think was unfortunate, I think that brought some diversity in a different way to the project. Although I did say in my review that watching Doctor Strange, it was weird that, you have this ancient mystic martial arts in Asia, and no one in Asia can master it, right? It takes a British black man and a Caucasian man and woman to take it, to take it to the next level. I don't know how much longer Doctor Strange could potentially get away with that, and I hope that Marvel is keeping an eye on this. And if they make another Doctor Strange, which I assume they will down the line, they try to address that. But I also think that there's a lack of star power for Finn Jones. I think that's another problem. And speaking of Finn Jones, somebody challenged him about the lack of diversity in the show. I mean, what do they expect Finn Jones to say? You're right. They shouldn't have cast me, right? He's not going to say that. But he got into such an argument with this person that he actually quit Twitter for like 24 hours or something. And I think that was a mistake. I think it makes the story bigger. He should have just held his ground. But the woman he was arguing with, I think, made some good points because, he brought up the same old Danny Rand has always been a Caucasian character. This isn't whitewashing. And this woman, I think, very correctly said, well, that was the 1970s when this character was created. And, that was a problem of the period that they wouldn't have diverse leads. They weren't representative of who's out in the world. And, we've been discussing, immigration in London in the 1930s and why it's so great to have Lin-Manuel Miranda in that movie, Mary Poppins Returns, and how I think history and the entertainment business has really made it seem like the world has not always been diverse. Everybody used to stay in their regions of the planet, which was actually not true. So you have to have the diversity of reality reflected in entertainment so that people don't buy the lie, so to speak, right? And I think people are just tired of this idea that it takes a Caucasian to master another community's art form, in this case, martial arts. It's a little bit like the problem a lot of people had with La La Land and why that backlash eventually emerged, I think rightfully so, that it was Ryan Gosling was the savior of jazz, right? He was the one telling John Legend how to do jazz. And some of the critics said they had a real problem with Danny Rand lecturing, or as they said, white-splaining martial arts to Colleen Wing, who's played by an Asian actress. So I think, people just can't get behind that anymore. And Finn Jones just not having the star power, not delivering a performance. I haven't seen the first six episodes were released for a review. I haven't seen them myself, so I can't personally speak to it. But I think that maybe in the absence of just a performance that blows everyone away, I think the unfortunate problems become even more obvious. So this is just a problem that Hollywood is suffering from. This is just the latest project to fall beneath it. And I really, as I've said from the beginning, I think it would have greatly benefited Marvel Netflix shows to update the character appropriately. Oh yes, and as that woman was saying, I lost my train of thought, I apologize. She said that attitude in the 1970s is what hurt Bruce Lee's ability to get work in Hollywood. And I thought that was a fabulous, I think she won the argument with that one. That was really, really strong. Talking about how tragic it was that someone with Bruce Lee's talent couldn't get work in Hollywood because of this exact same mentality. And how can it still be the same like 40 years later, right? And then and almost 50 years later. So I think that's extremely true. And I think it would have, they already have Daredevil, so they already have a Caucasian lead. They already have Punisher, right? And they've got Jessica Jones. So it's not like we're pushing anybody out. I think that it would just have not only brought more diversity to the group, but I think it would have been a more interesting dynamic instead of just another Caucasian hero and who seems just a little bit, what is the difference besides a glowing fist, obviously, between Daredevil, who also utilizes martial arts, and boxing too, of course, because of his father's background. But and Danny Rand. So I think majorly missed opportunity, and it's going to hurt. It's going to give a black eye to the entire Marvel Netflix family. So I'm curious, what do you guys think? Are you coming around at all to potentially of casting an Asian lead? You could, as we've discussed before, I was talking to my friend about this morning. You could have made it that the Rand family were Asian Americans, and my friend had this great idea. She was like, what if the trip that they're taking where they have the plane crash as parents is to reconnect them to their roots, right? They feel that they've lost connection with their heritage, and they want their kids to establish that. So they have a tragic plane crash, and then that's what makes Danny Rand an outsider in this mystical community that he lands in. Not that he's Caucasian, but he's Asian American and doesn't have that connection. And then the whole show is about him not only, becoming the Iron Fist, but getting that connection that his parents wanted him to have and what led to their death with his heritage. I think that sounds really fantastic. So much stronger instead of just, as I've said, Bruce Wayne light, and many of you feel Arrow light. All right, so that's the first story of the day. I guess Beauty and the Beast doesn't have to worry about Iron Fist releasing the same weekend, right? So, and although Beauty and the Beast has its own problems. So the second story of the day was actually a story tweeted to me by Pedro, BTT viewer Pedro, thank you. And it's an absolutely shocking story about the CGI doubles used in Logan. Not just doubles, but actors, because they emote. So I've put a link down below in the video description to this article because it's just mind-boggling. But the sequences in Logan when he's driving the car in Mexico, in the Mexico compound, trying to escape, right, with Xavier and X-23? Well, even in the close-up shots, that's not Hugh Jackman. That's a double with the face replaced digitally. And that really shocked me because, again, there was emoting going on in those close-ups. I really felt the drama and the stakes of the situation. It wasn't just a really, when they replace X-23's stunt double because they need a grown woman to do it, I understand. You're like, okay, it's happening so quickly, of course that's a stunt double, and they put a different face on it. But to do that replacement in close-ups and to have acting happening, that just is like, I had not realized that they had progressed to that level. That's just crazy to me. And I'm not a big fan of it, in fact. And then it makes you realize that General Tarkin in Rogue One was just the tip of the iceberg. But that, even there, you were like, well, first of all, I know Peter Cushing is dead, so I know that's not him. But also you could tell. You could still kind of tell. But I couldn't tell in Logan, which is what really kind of freaks me out, right? I especially have a problem with it because of the actors that are having their heads replaced. Stunt people, again, it's part of the job. You're supposed to be subbing in for the lead actors. But for close-ups and this actor, getting all the movement right physically, and, I know that he's a guideline for the performance that Hugh Jackman supposedly gives, but gives it, in terms of CGI. So that, I guess I don't quite understand why. I guess they wanted to have really, real shots and not do it with a green screen, so they needed a professional stunt driver. But for the close-ups, I think, I'd be like, Hugh Jackman, just like kind of like swerve around a little bit there. Or have one of those cars where they have two drivers, right? And I'd put the driver, they've built those cars for, if you've ever gone to see like a stunt show at a theme park, they talk about how there are sometimes two steering wheels, and they put the steering wheel sometimes in the back of the car. So I would just put, I'd make a little bit of a wider car. I'd put the actual driver behind the camera, and then Hugh Jackman could just mimic it. Maybe they don't want to endanger him, but I mean, I don't know. Strap him in there. Let's make it work. I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit cheating. I think it kind of crosses the line. But I'm very curious to hear what you think, and also just to let you know that these kind of CGI doubles exist, and they're being used in this way. Now, the third story of the day, a number of you tweeted this to me, and this was the announcement that the Cinepolis movie chain is going to open 2 theaters in Southern California called Cinepolis Junior. And this is the infamous movie theater that made the rounds yesterday with a playground inside of it, including a slide. What kid is going to watch a movie when there's a giant slide next to them that goes the length of the movie theater? I want to go on the slide, right? That slide's going to break for sure. Because I think, how about the employees when, they're before the theater opens, they're like, let's go down the slide. So anyway, they have a couple of these in Mexico, so I guess it does work because, it's such a successful model. They've decided to bring it to the United States. But it's called Cinepolis Junior, and they play only family movies there. Although you would think that you would want to play non-family movies there because that's why you would want to go to the movies in particular, because that's the movie your kid isn't interested in and needs something to distract them, right? So in Mexico, though, get this, they only have the playground available before the movie and during intermission. Although, good luck. I mean, again, if the movie loses their interest for just a second, they're going to be like, I want to go play. But they said that in Los Angeles, they're considering leaving the house lights on low so that kids can play throughout the film. Now, here's the first thing. If your kid can't sit through a movie, I'm sorry to break it to you, but your kid doesn't like movies. I've been going to the movies since I was really little. My parents have taken me. It fostered a love of movies in me. And I was able to sit through the film, no problem. Not just able to, I wanted to. I had a good time. I was interested in what was on the screen. But not everybody loves movies. And so if your little kid doesn't love movies, stop dragging them to the movies. Get a babysitter. And on that note, I saw some Twitter responses to this that were covered. And there's apparently a Harkins theater chain in California and Arizona that does have a babysitting play area, but in the lobby. That's a little bit scary to leave your child in the lobby so close to the door, but apparently it's successful, right? I mean, I guess it can be sometimes hard to get a babysitter, but I don't see why you can't maybe, just get a babysitter. I mean, people have been getting babysitters so they can go to the movies for decades. It works. So it's crazy. So anyway, the other thing is that if your child is playing during the movie, how can you watch the movie and not watch your child? Because they could fall. You have to keep an eye on your kid. So who's really watching the movie at this point, right? And also you have to pay extra for this. This isn't a way to entice you to go to the movies. This is a surcharge. So I just think it's absolutely nuts. And it just sounds like an total disaster to me. Again, if your kid if kids like movies, they can sit through them and have a great time. I just don't see any reason to force anyone to go to the theater. I don't know what's going on. I think you're seeing a real problem for theaters trying to entice people to come out to them because of streaming and just, but I think at the end of the day, again, if you can keep people from talking during the movie and getting on their phone and leaving a mess, you would not have to go to these ridiculous lengths. I mean, really, is this cheaper than just policing the theater and making sure people aren't on their phone and talking? That's all you have to do. I don't understand. I don't understand why they don't get that, the theaters. It's just so obvious. I guess they don't go to movies themselves, which is kind of sad. That continues to be a problem. The people that make movies and distribute movies and show movies aren't moviegoers themselves. If they were, they would get it. Just like, Alamo Drafthouse, I think, is so successful and has such a strong following. ArcLight as well, because I think that's run by people who go to the movies. All right, so the viewer question is really great. This is a great viewer question. This is from Basma, Basma like .x. So Basma.x. I love your name, Basma. So Basma says, hey, Grace, I have a question. I noticed that in the past, most of the classic beloved films that were and are popular with audiences were often awarded for Oscars. And these films would be, for the most part, amongst the highest grossing films of the year. That's true. We'll get into that in a moment. For example, most of the highest grossing films of all time, Avatar, Gone with the Wind, Sound of Music, etc., have won or been nominated for Oscars. However, nowadays, Oscar films are completely separate from mainstream cinema, such as Moonlight winning Best Picture despite not being popular with general audiences. Why is there such a divergence with popular mainstream film and critically acclaimed Oscar-worthy films? And what or when caused this shift in film? Fabulous question, Basma. Love it. All right, so, yes, that's true. Avatar, Inglourious Basterds, Blindside, Gravity. Those films were all recent, and they were all very popular both with moviegoers and with the Academy. Also, you had actors winning finally that got a lot of attention. Leonardo DiCaprio for The Revenant. That was a big thing. Also, Natalie Portman for Black Swan. Tremendous amount of support for her to get that win. Interestingly, didn't materialize this year for people like Emma Stone. I think she really hurt her career with the Spider-Man movies, which is too bad. I think she's not quite as lovable as she used to be, but I have faith she can get back there. But anyway, it's once again, what caused this major shift? Marvel. Marvel has been a seismic shift in the film industry at multiple levels. So this is what's happened. So Marvel came in and created a cinematic universe and formulaic blockbusters that were just huge crowd pleasers. Just huge crowd pleasers. And they made so much money and continue to make so much money that all the other studios are following suit. So audiences, they only want to see that type of movie. That's a big problem. So there's less artistic blockbusters that are doing well and less non-blockbusters that do well, right? Would a movie like The Blind Side still do well these days? Because, people just they would see it and today they go, that's a rental, right? That's a streamer. It's something I'm going to stream at home. I'm not going to pay movie theater prices for that. I've got to save my money for Beauty and the Beast, right? That's totally what happens, right? Or Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm not going to pay to see Blindside in the theater. So that's what happens. And then because of that, critics in the industry have a negative, and I think understandable, averse reaction to these films. And they go, I'm going to work against them because they're killing everything else in the movie industry, right? So I'll be damned if I'm going to reward a blockbuster film, right? An exception last year was Mad Max Fury Road, but then again, it also had no real chance in any of the major categories. And I think, audiences realize that, and so they feel like that's not a genuine, it's not like Avatar and Inglourious Basterds, and Blindside, which won Best Actress, that had, and Gravity for Best Director, that had a genuine shot at winning awards. And for instance, Deadpool should have gotten a nomination. I think it really deserved it because it was such a game changer, and it should have been nominated. Maybe everybody could have gotten behind Jungle Book, but I don't think people were as passionate about that as they've been about other films in the past. And then as for La La Land, well, sure, some people just absolutely loved that movie. Some people also absolutely hated it, and that was very divisive. And I think that also didn't create the same situation. But I think that's what's going on. I think that Marvel has changed the game. I think it's changed what audiences want to see and are willing to pay to see in the theater. And I think that's affected the type of blockbusters that are being made. So there are less artistic blockbusters. And then I think that's kind of put critics in the industry in a vengeful mood. So that's totally what's gone down. It's fascinating. Hopefully we'll see a shift, but it's back in the other direction. But when you see like the opening gross projection for Kong Skull Island, it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. So great question, Basma. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Basma's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions, of course, that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.